All right, everybody, welcome to the next session on teams, leagues, and governing bodies. We appreciate everybody joining us here. Uh, Very great pleasure to be joined by Troy Vincent, Benita Fitzgerald Mosley, Chris Deubert, and Jason Jenkins. Uh, they've all got extensive backgrounds and bios, and I want to give everybody a quick overview. I know if we went through the whole background for each of them, it would probably take us another day of the conference to go through all of their accomplishments and the great work that they've been doing. But I'll start with Troy. Troy Vincent is the Executive VP of Football Operations at the National Football League. He began his playing career as the 7th overall pick in the first round for the Miami Dolphins in the 1992 draft. Played 15 seasons in the league and continues to be nominated for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He has been inducted in the Hall of Fame for the Eagles, the state of Pennsylvania, the University of Wisconsin, and Pennsbury High School, so on Wisconsin. In his current position with the NFL, he employs the highest standards to enhance, preserve football and its value to society. His transformational and visionary leadership uses the game of football to positively impact people's lives through excellence and service by applying clarity, consistency, and credibility to all aspects of football operations. And we're looking forward to talking about some of Troy's work with the HBCUs and other things around the league. Next, Benita Fitzgerald Mosley. Benita serves as the head of Community and Impact and president of Fund Play for LeagueApps. In this role, Benita helps guide LeagueApps in its commitment, centered by a core belief in the power of equitable sport to shape a youth sports industry that makes the world better. As president of Fund Play, Benita leads LeagueApps' program to support youth sports organizations and foster sports experience opportunities for young people from underserved communities. LeagueApps created Fun Play to achieve its goal of impacting 500,000 kids by the end of 2022 through software grants, training, professional development, partnerships with aligned nonprofits, and advocacy. Her illustrious career as a track athlete was capped by winning a gold medal in the 100-meter hurdles at the 1984 Olympic Games in Los Angeles, making her the first American woman to accomplish that feat. Prior to joining LeagueApps, Benita served as a CEO of Laureus Sport for Good Foundation and also previously worked as COO for the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee and Chief of Sport Performance for USA Track and Field. Benita is a graduate of the University of Tennessee with a BS in Industrial Engineering and a charter member of the Tennessee Volunteers Hall of Fame. Chris Deubert is DC United's general counsel. Prior to joining DC United, Chris worked at 2 law firms in New York City in the areas of sports law and commercial intellectual property, securities, labor, and employment litigation. From 2014 to 2017, Chris was a senior law and ethics associate for the Law and Ethics Initiative of the Football Players Health Study at Harvard University, a long-term research project designed to improve the health and well-being of current, former, and future NFL players. The Law and Ethics Initiative, led by the Petrie Flom Center for Health and Law Policy, Biotechnology, and Bioethics at Harvard Law School, studied legal and ethical issues affecting NFL player health and issued a wide variety of publications that garnered significant public attention, including coverage in the New York Times, Washington Post, Boston Globe, Sports Illustrated, and ESPN. Chris' sports practice focused primarily on representing NFL players in league matters, including appeals for commissioner discipline under the NFL's policy and program on substance abuse and under the NFL's policy on anabolic steroids and related substances. Chris regularly represented players and agents in disputes under the NFLPA's arbitration procedures. Other clients included the PGA Tour, NBA players, and NCAA Division I student athletes, sports agents, and agencies. Chris graduated with a joint JD MBA from Fordham University School of Law and Graduate School of Business and a BS in Sport Management from the University of Massachusetts. Jason Jenkins is in his 12th season with the Miami Dolphins and was named Senior Vice President of Communications and Community Affairs in 2015. Jason oversees the organization's front-facing brands, including media, outreach, public relations, digital and social media, and community efforts. Jason previously served as the team's VP of Communications, being named to that position in 2013. Prior to joining the Dolphins, Jason worked in the media relations department for the 49ers, as well as served as Associate Athletic Director at Texas Southern University and as Athletic Sales and Promotion Manager and Sports Communication Assistant at Lehigh. A native of Houston, Jason earned his bachelor degree in broadcast journalism from Texas Tech University. Jason was selected by faculty as the Outstanding Alumni Award winner and commencement speaker for the 2018 Texas Tech graduating class. Jason resides in Parkland, Florida with his wife and their 3 children. So everybody, thank you for putting up with that. Welcome to Sports Philanthropy World. We're glad that you're here. Each of you work in the sports arena in different capacities, really interfacing in different ways, different types of sports. So I want to start with Troy. I think a lot of the work that you're doing with the NFL now and the HBCUs is really instructive on the power a league has to dictate the initiative and policies of things that are going on. So love for you to share some of that work and how that came about from the league's perspective.
And we've been working with our with HBCUs, that's the historically black colleges and universities. We've been very intentional about it. I want to say Super Bowl 50 or 51, where we acknowledge the Gold Jackets, the Hall of Famers that have came from those historically black colleges and universities in our pregame. And from there, when we look at our diversity efforts and true inclusion efforts, we talk about pipeline and where are these student athletes? Where are the stars of the future? And we just felt like as a league, partnering with our historically black colleges and universities, both on and off the field, with career forums, really showing the students that there are other job opportunities and disciplines outside of the game itself in the field of play. And, having that partnership, having all 32 clubs participate in job fairs, career forums, we're now getting into areas that the students wouldn't realize that are opportunities in the business of sport, legal, journalism, engineering, analytics. All of these disciplines live here in our ecosystem. But the students and the student athletes were not aware of these opportunities. And so the National Football League, we've partnered in with the 4 major conferences there to put on these events to identify future and bright talent across the spectrum for job opportunities in the future.
So as you look at those types of opportunities, Benita, you've been in a number of different roles when you look at the role at the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee and the work that you did with Laureus. You've seen this from the angles of the governing body. You've seen it from a large national, international foundation that works with a lot of different organizations. So talk a little bit about how that agenda is set from the top in terms of dictating which initiatives you're going to look at. You're on mute.
As far as philanthropic initiatives with organizations, yeah, I mean, the main focus, I think, for each of those, a kind of a common refrain is using sport as a tool for social change. That because, if you go back to Nelson Mandela's quote about sport has the power to change the world, it has the power to unite, it inspires people in a way that little else does. And you think about the power of particularly Olympic sport and Paralympic sport, the worldwide nature of that. When you look at something like the Laureus Sport for Good Foundation, or now where I am at LeagueApps, no matter your purview, whether the NFL or MLB or whichever league it is, I think the real main point is how can we use the power of sport to unite people, to bring them together, to bring resources to people who are under-resourced, and provide opportunities for all to participate in the collective good. And so I think, the partnerships with the with the historically Black colleges and universities is a perfect example of that. By helping these kids understand that most of the jobs I've had in sport had nothing to do with what's happening on the playing field itself. I start my job as chief of sport performance for USA Track and Field. Every other position I've held has been in an administrative or managerial executive role. And so these opportunities are out there for these kids. They have a passion for sport. They have interest in pursuing sport as a career for themselves. And the fact that they can do it as an HR person, a finance person, a lawyer, and don't have to be a coach or an actual athlete on the playing field is really important. And so bringing these opportunities to kids to play first and foremost, to get involved in sport and physical activity, and all the way up to having a career, I think is important and should be first and foremost for our organizations as we think about the change we want to make in the world.
So, Chris, as Benita mentioned, lawyers, there's always a lot of negativity around that title and role in terms of how it impacts what's going on. But if you look at the roles that you've served in, looking at player health, dealing with some of the controversies and disputes with agents and the arbitration provisions, I think one of the challenges is how do you use that power, from the legal side, and then when specifically you're working now with DC United, how does that background on the legal end impact the way that you approach getting DC United involved in the community?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Roy. And so the way in which I'm principally involved in our sort of philanthropic efforts does have very much a legal component, because we constructed a new stadium about 2.5 years ago in Southwest DC in a community, DC being a historically Black community and city, affectionately known as Chocolate City. And our community that we're in is also has been subject to displacement in the past, in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. And so it's very important that we understand and acknowledge that. And so when the stadium was built, there's also a community benefits agreement with community groups that we would provide certain benefits, including letting kids in the area go to soccer camps, looking for opportunities to raise money, looking for internships and those kinds of things for the local community. And so, fortunately, we have community groups that are very involved in holding us to make sure we fulfill those obligations. And that's great, and we want to fulfill those obligations and do everything we can to make sure we're being the best partner we can. We principally do that through our charitable partner, DC Scores, which is an organization that provides life skills to young kids, and largely elementary and middle school through soccer and poetry. And so they help us meet a lot of our obligations. And I phrase it as obligations because you asked, and that's how a lawyer I think of things. But it has an overwhelmingly positive effect on the morale of not only of our staff, but also our relationship with the community.
So, Jason, I want to jump down to you now with the Dolphins. You and I first met, I think it's probably almost 10 years ago, when I came down there to look at some of the work that was being done, and you were in a different role. But as I've followed the Dolphins and their community efforts, I follow a lot of teams. The Dolphins seem to pop up more than almost any of them in terms of how actively engaged they are within their community, not just from sitting in the offices, but really out there in the community, on the streets, doing work with different organizations. So tell us about that type of work and how you decide, with the great number of needs out there, how you make a determination where you're going to start.
And I want to say thank you again. You said 10 years ago. I probably had some hair then when I saw you, if it was that long ago. But it was definitely good to see you then, and definitely great to see what you've built now. And here at the Dolphins, we're just very fortunate. I mean, we have a great owner in Stephen Ross, a vice chairman in Tom Garfinkel, our head coach Brian Flores, our general manager Chris Greer, that are very intentional and understand their roles as being a steward of the community. And as Troy knows, he was drafted here with the Dolphins. South Florida is such a diverse area. You can go 15 minutes in different directions. You get like a different lifestyle, different culture. And we want to try to use our platform as a way to bring those people together. A lot of people So a lot of the panelists, use that same word in terms of intentionality and in terms of unites. So we have a program called Football Unites, where we try to use our platform to bring people together. And our point of view is, if you're a Dolphins fan, you go to a game, we scored a winning touchdown, you look in the stands, it doesn't matter your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, your identity, ability, faith, age. All those people are Dolphins fans. So how can we use that fandom of the Dolphins in the community to bring like-minded organizations together? So we're very intentional of the groups we work with around different intersections of South Florida, but it's been very fulfilling and meaningful to have this ability to make this positive change.
Well, congratulations on the great work that you do down there. I want to turn for a minute in terms of talking about the process. One of the questions I get frequently from different community organizations and nonprofits is, how do we go to a larger organization, a pro team, the NFL, and get them interested in the work that we're doing? I'm sure, Troy, as you look at all of the things that come into your office, there's probably a mountain of requests from organizations that want to partner with the NFL. So as you go through that, maybe you can help explain a little bit of what that process consists of and how some of those decisions are made.
Well, I will begin with advising, if you know someone in the organization, go to that person first about asking, who is the point of contact? Who's the key contact? How can I get in front of, whether it's individual A, B, C, or what group or unit is overseeing whatever they may be wanting to present. And that process, most of the time, dealing with the not-for-profits, and most of the organizations that come into play here is not-for-profits. That's and most of that funding comes through the NFL Foundation. For those for-profit vendors, depending on what the discipline is, if it's something around technology, if it's something game-related, going to that individual business unit. Myself, as the chief football officer, most of the time I'm seeing now in the COVID environment, I'm seeing things on. I have different COVID measures to help keep the locker room safe. But typically, if you focus in on, you have the NFL Foundation, which really covers the entire umbrella as it deals with, say, 501c3s or those not-for-profits. And then if it's specific around technology, say around sports betting, legal matters, then I would just say, try to identify someone in that particular unit in the organization. The stuff is public information, and try to find send an email. Most of the time, getting an email or I read all mail, or getting something through the mail, and I return every phone call, return every email because you just don't know. And we all sit in a position where we sit, we have an opportunity to see what's out there, what's available, whether it works or not works. We get a chance to explore and look at different innovations.
Benita, you've seen it from a few different roles as you've gone through. How do those differ when you were working on the side of a governing body and evaluating which initiatives to support and undertake compared to the work you did at Laureus?
Right. So I guess I'll start with LeagueApps, where I am now as a sports technology, SaaS company. Our main focus, obviously, on the surface, looks like it would be to have people and have organizations put their organizations and run their organizations on our platform. But really, our mission is to help youth sports leaders deliver amazing experiences for all. And that ensures that we have a youth sports culture that makes the world better. And so when we're focused on that, then the platform becomes something that's helping to manifest that, as opposed to being the main focus. And our work with the professional leagues is really helping use our technology to help them in the community programs that they're doing. So for one example is the RBI program with Major League Baseball, reviving baseball in the inner cities. And so we are providing our free platform to 100 RBI organizations in underserved communities around the country. We're doing the same with the National Hockey League. We're working on some of that, doing something similar with the NFL and others. And so we have 70 different professional teams that we're working with in the same vein. And so I think the real crux of it is, if we were just a youth sports technology platform may not be of great interest because our missions wouldn't really align. And so I think that goes for when I was at Laureate Sport for Good Foundation and we were handing out grants, or whether I was with the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee and we were giving grants to national governing bodies for their work to support athletes and their quest for Olympic golds, or wherever's on the opposite side at USA Track and Field, writing a high performance plan to get the grant from the USOPC. The first and foremost thing for me is making sure our goals align, our mission aligns, and that we're both kind of rowing in the same direction. And how can we work together for that, so that 1 + 1 = 3, and that we're actually able to achieve more together than we could by ourselves.
And I think that's really the critical point, and that's what I want to hear, Chris, as we start talking. Both you and Jason, from a team perspective, it's really about amplification of how do you take the resources that a team has in terms of financial resources, marketing and media resources, celebrity clout, and use that to amplify the impact in the community.
Yeah, and I would reiterate actually what Troy said, which is the importance of answering every phone call or email, just even as a professional matter, but there's always things you can learn about what's going on, or different products or different vendors, different services, etc. That can be useful. But at the same time, as you sort of indicated, MLS clubs don't have the resources, meaning financial resources, particularly of the NFL or NFL clubs. And so how can we be helpful? And I think some of the easiest ways is through where cash is more challenging, our people, our time, and sometimes equipment, but also our gear, but also I think increasingly our digital and social media. That's where we're able to interact with fans, and increasingly, partnership assets are provided there. And so in the same respects, I think having our athletes and using those platforms to speak out about certain causes or things that are important to the organization or to the athletes individually is a really valuable way in which we can be somewhat helpful here.
Jason, you talked about specifically the diversity in South Florida and the number of different communities that you work with. I'm sure that's a very difficult task to balance how you work with the communities to make sure that nobody's feeling left out, and that the amount of time and resources that are going in different directions, not going to exactly balance, but making sure that there's some type of equitable support.
Yeah, along those lines, we approach that obviously as a lot of different organizations, a lot of different worthy organizations, and I'm sure everyone on the panel, deals with the same thing. I think what we've done is through all of our community programming, there's levels to engagement, but also you just don't know, maybe an auction item or a community appearance or a player appearance or cheer appearance, depending on the organization, that might mean just as much as sponsoring an event. So it's all these different ways to organize and reach out, and we really want to make sure we integrate organizations into our community programming, but also that we learn from them as well too, especially in the social justice space. I think what we've learned and what we try to be we're not experts in some areas, but how can we work with organizations that are experts in different areas and share from their platform, share from their knowledge, share from their learning. That's one of the things our CEO, Tom Garfinkel, has always talked about, being a continuous learner, but also through our ownership is, we don't have all the answers to some of these issues. So it's a matter of working with trusted organizations, having them be advocates, and also our pitch to them is that we don't want our relationships to be transactional. We don't want to be, the Dolphins, bought a table at this event, so we just support these issues. We want meaningful long-term engagements, and with that, we can vet organizations. They can get a feeling for us, we can get a feeling for them, and then a lot of our programming ideas have come from the partner organizations, and this is through long-form communication.
Hey, Roy, can I add one thing to Jason's point?
Sure.
And he's absolutely correct. What we do, and I would just say, I don't use the term expert lightly, but we are experts at putting on live entertainment on Sunday, Mondays, and Thursdays. That's what the National Football League's all about. So our efforts are really geared towards, when we talk about working with either community partners, it's really, what does the National Football League do best? We put on live entertainment, but we have the ability to drive awareness. And also, we're great conveners. We have the ability to bring people together. Doesn't matter the topic, the subject matter, but bringing people into a room to discuss an issue. And our role is as we see ourselves as identifying, whether it's social justice, but identifying organizations, we call grassroots organizations, that are boots on the ground, that are doing good community work, regional, national work, and us partnering with that organization to either amplify or drive awareness to what they're doing. And that's kind of been our model. And Jason hit it right. We want to make sure, and it's so important for, at least for the National Football League, that things, Benita said this, that we align with people that have our same core values and are aligned on our mission. Our mission is live entertainment and a competitive game on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays. And then we partner with community organizations to drive their efforts in the community to address humanity issues.
So you touched on an important issue, which is how selecting organizations for you to work with, grassroots organizations. So as you go through that process, what are some of the key factors that you look at in evaluating who is going to be a good partner for the National Football League?
Well, each organization has to submit a written proposal of who they are, who's their board, who are they affiliated with, where do their dollars go, a real plan. And those decisions aren't made in a vacuum. We actually collaborate with our players on behalf of, when we talk about social justice. I'll just speak specifically to around some of the social justice concerns in those initiatives, where club ownership and players collaborate together along with NFL staff to support proposals that we see come in that's evaluated to say, okay, in these 4 areas that we're focused in on, here are some organizations that have submitted. Here's what they do. Here's how many kids they impact or adults they impact. Here's their reach. Here's their funding allocation. And then we make a collective decision to say, this organization here aligns with what we're trying to get done. They meet one of the areas that we have areas of focus that we would like to address issues in this particular area. And then there's a collective decision, bring the organization in, talk them through our process, and then potentially say an award of a financial award or grant. They could become now our grant recipient. But as Chris has mentioned, and both Benita has been, sometimes just driving awareness, using our own and operated assets to speak to millions of people about their organization or their efforts, sometimes is much more valuable than the actual exchange of currency.
And I think that's a critical point for a lot of organizations to understand, which is, as you said, anybody in the sports business space for a team, right? You're talking about the event production. The event is what is the critical element there. But as you talk about the process and the applications coming in, that sounds like a fairly extensive procedure. So front to end, how long does it take? Because we see a lot of organizations that will come to us and talk about reaching out, a few weeks before an event or a month before an event. I'm sure that the timeline at the NFL and probably with most of the teams is much longer than that in terms of submissions and review and everything like that.
So it's actually for a national. It's 2 times a year that we do an evaluation during the season on some of our player efforts. We say the players' efforts in between that September to January. So we get a lot of submissions during that time period. But for the broader organization, for the NFL Foundation and our social justice work, we're talking twice a year. Say in the beginning of the year and then halfway through the season, of times on when the principal ownership and the players coalition are actually evaluating proposals.
Yeah, and Roy, I would just jump in to reiterate, I think, sort of what Jason was talking about too, which is it takes time because you want to build an authentic relationship there. And so if someone comes in and asks for something for a one-off event, that's not usually going to be as effective. But if they come in and want to have, and begin to have discussions, and maybe there's alignment with other partners of ours, then that sets the table, I think, for better engagement, both in the short term and the long term.
And I want to turn to Benita for a minute as well. As you're looking at this in the LeagueApps world, it's a little bit different because it's not focused on an event production, but you're still determining what needs to happen and which organizations you're going to work with and support, just as you did when at Laureus. One of the questions we get a lot is, why didn't we get funded?
Yeah.
What was wrong with our application? And everybody would like to have more feedback, call it transparency, whatever the sense is of what's missing from their application, what they need to do different as an organization in their submissions in order to be considered.
I think it's one of those things where the cream rises to the top, and it's really not anything that organizations do wrong. It's just something that other organizations do better. Troy and others were talking about kind of the process by which they vet organizations and in their funding. And, there's a lot of different criteria that are set. It's very thoughtful, particularly at Laureus when we were giving out, $2.5 million in grants every year, one of the largest grant makers of youth sports in the country. And, in making those considerations, we first had to do in a more objective perspective, think about, obviously what our goals are, particularly in these areas that we were trying to serve, what communities we were trying to serve, what are the challenges and needs in those communities, and then build a process and criteria relative to the needs of the community. And so it was less about that organization and what they do and what they stand for, more about what are the needs of the community that we're trying to serve and who could best serve those needs. And at LeagueApps, it is similar because we are providing technology, which is in many ways a great equalizer in providing this free technology to these organizations and underserved communities. We're hoping, that they are able to take the resources that they otherwise would have used to kind of manually manage the processes and take that time and energy in human resources to do more with more children and provide access to more kids to the opportunity to play, no matter what their circumstances. And so with this goal of creating more opportunities for 500,000 young people, we've done just 75 in 2020 alone, despite the pandemic when everything shut down. But we also are building a community whereby these organizations can work together. So this isn't necessarily, as Troy said, money changing hands or even technology necessarily, but by creating a community of youth sports organizers around the country that they can share best practices, learn, pairing them together, pay-to-play organizations with nonprofit organizations where they can learn from one another how best to do things where they're serving kids on the ground and providing youth development through sport, all the way through more enterprising organizations that really understand the business model and are able to run effective organizations, and sharing those best practices with one another. Again, back to our main point of giving more kids an opportunity to play. So back to your initial question, I think it's applying what you do to the needs that the organization you're applying to are trying to solve. And when you do that one-to-one matching, I think you have a higher chance of getting that funding or that grant.
And Roy,
go ahead.
I would also add, I just focused in my comments on let's just say the social side, that community, that the social responsibility side. But when we look at the for-profit side, that's year round. And those, frankly, contracts or opportunities on the for-profit side, when you look at our tentpole events, that's year round. And a lot of those things are a year in advance. We start talking about Pro Bowl, Super Bowl, Combine, the All-Star games. This is where organizations, individuals, or companies that may have something like Datable that may have a product that they would like to either introduce that may assist us in whether it's in areas of efficiency to further grow that platform. That is year around, and those things are being vetted constantly on a daily basis.
And I think that that's a challenge for a lot of the nonprofits is they're not, they may not be used to looking that far ahead in terms of the plan. So Jason, when you look at everything that you're doing in the community in Miami, every day I see different photos from initiatives and programs. Um, how far out do you plan that calendar? Because obviously there's a lot of steps that go into executing every single one of those events.
Well, and a lot of those things that are done, these are existing events that we join a part of, but just showing up. And I think the value of our organization, and I think why we've made an impact, is that organizationally, from a staff perspective, we've always tried to show up, be present, be involved, and have those communications. And my advice to organizations, it's all like again, it's like there's levels to it, engagement, and just understand that if it's a no, then it might not be a no down the road. But if it's like, okay, let me reach out to this team, LeagueApps, DC United, NFL, et cetera, and if they say no, well, I'm kind of done with them, and I go to the next one. It's more so learning about the mission, learning about the values, and showing how you align, and just being involved and being present, and just continue communication. So for us, again, like we call our engagement, whether it's a player appearance, whether it's a donation, whether it's an auction item, whether it's a PSA that our players create about different things around voting, and it's standard things. Well, we'll still get engaged with you if we bet you we're on the same page and we work together. Well, you can have this PSA, and while it's not particularly maybe saying your organization's name, that affiliation with the Dolphins can help to show what's going on. And also from our end, we're getting our message out to some markets and some segments that we may not be able to reach throughout that. So again, I mean, obviously we have an owner that provides resources, but those resources are finite. But it's determining what your level can be, and determining and trying to build true relationships in a partnership besides being transactional. And that's something I'll always repeat. That's something that we always say to organizations: if we aren't able to facilitate their requests, then doesn't mean that we can't work together down the road if it aligns.
Roy, can I just raise one other point? We as organizations, we share information too all the time across sports leagues and sports entities. So there may be something that we may be fine with today, but I'll ask the question: have you spoken to the MLS? Have you spoken to Major League Baseball? Have you had this discussion with the NBA? We're sharing USA Track and Field, so we all are sharing information when we find something good, or we say, you know what, that's really not aligned with some of the things that we're doing, but Major League Baseball, I think this is something that they've been working on, or lacrosse, but we're sharing all the time. And when we see good concepts that works, that's universal, we're sharing. We will share.
I think that goes back to what Chris brought up, and both you, all of you have emphasized, which is it's not transactional, it's a relationship, and looking at it from a long-term perspective and building that relationship. Because if I come and I knock on Chris's door for something today and he doesn't have it, and I walk away angry because I didn't get funded or I didn't get the support that I was looking for, you've wasted that opportunity. It may never be something Chris can fund, but Chris certainly has relationships with the three of you, with people in other leagues, other teams in the MLS, other organizations that he's dealt with. And I think that it's something I encourage every organization is to take that long-term perspective, because breaking through the ice there and getting to somebody at a league for most organizations is a very challenging effort, to find somebody that can be their point of contact and be a resource for them, and be, as Troy, as you said, on the inside. Because if somebody from your office walks something in your door and asks you to look at it, it's going to get a different perspective than if it just comes in the normal channel in the mail. And so it's certainly, what have you seen creatively that people have done to get your attention? Benita, we'll start with you.
Oh gosh, creatively. I have to give some thought to that one. I don't know that it's creatively from a laureate standpoint, which I've been on this job 3 weeks, so I got to go back to the previous job more often. But from a Lauria's standpoint, for us, it was the secret sauce because sports-based youth development organizations, generally speaking, are focused intentionally on driving youth development outcomes beyond the X's and O's in the game. But for us, I think it was really great when you saw organizations that both were able to produce athletes that went on to participate in college athletics and get college scholarships because they got the youth development work and did the work, the tutoring, the good grades, the mentoring, that developed them into amazing human beings on top of being great athletes. And so for us, the secret sauce was that. At LeagueApps, what we are looking for is organizations that certainly are doing work on the ground, that are serving the community, but have the ability, I believe, to expand if given free access to this technology. What will you do with it? How many more kids are you able to impact? How many more kids are you able to give access to sport that otherwise wouldn't have it? Because if you're going to maintain the status quo, that's not helping us and that's not helping the community. And we're all trying to advance and serve more kids. So I think you've got to show growth. You've got to show, here I am today, and here's where I want to be. And this is how the support from this entity, this funder, is going to help me get from point A to point B.
Chris, as you go through the process of working with different organizations, what kind of metrics do you have, or what kind of impact are you evaluating in determining which groups to work with?
Yeah, I think Benita touched on a lot of the things, about being modern, current, responsive to the community. You don't want to be doing something in a vacuum that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for either your fan base or the community. And aside from that, a lot of these types of initiatives that we're involved in come either through or then end up coupled with partners, and they have initiatives that interest them. And so I know, we've done some STEM projects with different technology focused partners we have. And that's obviously, an important issue, an important component of education for kids in the area. So I think finding a way that speaks to both the community and also to sort of the business partners we have is what's been productive.
Jason, when you go out to work in the community, you're looking at all kinds of different projects. Is there a framework that you have in terms of what's the most important element, or some of the most important elements in terms of number of people served, number of volunteer hours? How do you aggregate all of that information?
Well, thankfully, Troy and the NFL created the Huddle for 100 program this past year, so we were able to aggregate and put some metrics on, and I think it was great being a part of that, and the NFL really through their 100 years promoting community service initiatives and activities. So that kind of actually kicked us into high gear in terms of showing an impact and value, and especially from a community relations and foundation aspect. That's important, to look at. I mean, our sort of broad base is terms of health, education, and uniting people. And one of the things we tried to be, it's just because of like the organization and the Dolphins organization and the brand is the first professional sports franchise in South Florida. We have a big reach, but also, as Troy knows, we have a strong alumni base that are down here with a wide variety of interests as well. And so it's really kind of like collecting all the things they do under a Dolphins umbrella, because as they represent themselves in different organizations, they're thought of as the Dolphins, but it was really educating them about our mission. So when they go out and do their things, they're pushing the same mission as we are around health, education, and uniting people. And we have Nat Moore, who's over our alumni, that does an amazing job. But it was so many things that were going out. There was no messaging going out of how that related to the Dolphins, and it was very silo oriented. So being intentional, looking at that, trying to get those things under control. We were able to create ambassadors for our organization, going out and pushing that same mission of the Dolphins Foundation. But as a whole, if the organization is around health, it's around education, and with a core of humanity, what you've heard before, uniting people, that's sort of how we looked at it. And then we have, and by advice to organizations, is to be, outcome oriented and show what your outcomes will be, because we've worked with some organizations that are national organizations that have used national reach, but we've worked with some organizations that are really in the heart of Miami Gardens, where our stadium is located, that are doing great and transformational work that needs a push and needs our platform as well. So we're very broad by the nature of what we do, but we also try to work that within our budget and resources as well.
Troy, so Jason gave you a shout out there with the technology and the platform that you have provided from the NFL side. So as the league looks at its initiatives, how do you determine what to undertake in terms of what is going to be transformational, not only from a league perspective, but really from the club perspective, and balancing the need for the league to have some of its own initiatives, but giving the clubs the autonomy to work in their own communities and in their own style?
Well, everything begins and ends with the club. And I think we realize that the National Football League is built on the impact and the amplification and the success that the 32 clubs have. You know, we're an entity to try to make sure there's balance and there's equity. When the clubs win and they win in their local market, the National Football League wins. And we just try to create the unification, sharing best practices, creating a model and a template that is based off of what we have already seen, not created, but what we have seen in Miami, in Seattle, in Cincinnati, in New England. We bring all those things together. How do we enhance that? So when we're looking at things, it's about the game and fan engagement. So as we look at how do we never mission drift, it's about the game. It's about what the clubs are doing that drives the game here in New York, LA, and New Jersey.
So I know we're coming to our about last 10 minutes here, so I want to make sure everybody gets another chance to share their view as you look down the road, Benita, the next 3 years with LeagueApps. You've got an initiative to get 500,000 kids involved. What kind of help do you need? What organizations are you going to partner with, and what can groups in our network do to help support your goals?
Yeah, the kinds of groups that we're partnering with, we were a co-founder of the Play Sports Coalition, stands for promoting local and youth sports organizations. It was, founded post, once the COVID-19 crisis hit, and as we know, the sports industry went on pause, and that affected and impacted youth sports organizations all over the country. And so I was actually part of that initial steering committee as CEO of Laureus, and continue on that committee with LeagueApps. And we've been working for several months to incorporate language into federal funding bills that would include organizations and entities like these youth sports organizations that aren't always like other small businesses in the way they're run and structured. And so that is continuing with that continued advocacy, not only at the federal level, but at the local and regional and state level for these sports organizations as they're returning to play. They're encountering access to fields and infrastructure, and as schools are partly open and closed, funding that these after-school programs may have gotten before is now limited. And so we, it's continued need to advocate on their behalf. I think how you and others can help LeagueApps is really identifying organizations that might benefit from both the technology platform that LeagueApps could offer nonprofit organizations, but also referring organizations to us as we really stand up this youth sports industry that didn't exist before. And it really consists of organizations all the way from grassroots nonprofits to very high-level enterprising youth sports organizations. And they all, as I said before, bring something of benefit to the organization, and we're pulling these people together to be able to have them learn from one another. So more the merrier that we have involved in this community, in access to the platform. And so as you know of organizations that are in need of help, refer them to me. Thank you.
So, Chris, you're located right there in DC. You got the government right in your backyard. what can you do, and how can organizations in our network collaborate with you and the type of work that you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so two things I think. One, unfortunately, we still need to get past COVID a little bit because that's been a major hit both to our not just the business but also the ability to be in person, do activate on these types of partnerships and movements and whatnot. But the other important thing I think that's been touched on a little bit is expertise. Because as you indicated, we're in DC, we feel a little bit more of an obligation to be active on social justice issues and other causes. But we need to be doing it mindfully and authentically. And we have internal committees, but we're definitely in need of continued expertise and how to engage on those issues and how to do it thoughtfully with the community.
So Jason, you've been in your role for quite a while with the Dolphins and with the organization, even beyond that. As you look around and try and evaluate, you had the Super Bowl down there, got a lot of attention, a lot of interest. What's the next steps in your market in terms of changes you'd like to see and where you can use help?
I think for us, social justice or any kind of equity is about access to capital and access to opportunity. And so while from a community relations and foundation side, we work with organizations that have that in mind. But in addition, we want to work and really look at some of our minority spending, as well across all different types of groups. So, for instance, we have a program, a food relief program. So for a year, we've been working to feed 1,000 meals a day coming out of our stadium, working with Centerplate, which is our vendors, which has helped with jobs and helped through the community, people impacted by COVID-19. But a great outcome and offshoot of that was that we also worked with minority-owned restaurants and businesses across all these different intersections for them to buy these meals from them to keep them employed, keep their staff in work. And we've seen such a great community engagement in that aspect, and actually having the community serve the community on that front. So working with minority restaurants, working with our Football Unites partners to identify the people. I think that's going to be the next step for us, is being having an eye, because we all throughout this group, we all have our hearts in the right place, and we all have this amazing platform opportunity to do good. But even just beyond the community and the money we're giving out there, how can we impact minority-owned businesses that we've done? And Troy and the NFL has done an amazing job with their Connect program throughout Super Bowls and really using that platform and framework to really impact our South Florida business community as well.
So we'll turn it over to Troy to end the session here. Everybody looks up at the NFL and says you have all the money, all the resources that are possible to get done anything you want to do. So
not true. No, but thank you. I would just say, Roy, your platform, we need more of a platform where we as sports organizations, we can share what we're learning. We all work in our sports specific silos. But I think we all would agree, kids playing sports, doesn't matter what it is. We're a better nation. We're better communities, whether they're playing soccer, baseball, basketball, running track, swimming. We need organizations like bringing us together where we're not competing all the time. Our country right now, we're in need of unification. We're in need of sharing and best practices, wealth distribution. But I would just say, the national football, we don't have all the answers. And I'll be the first to stand in line to admit that. But as we share like we're doing today and learning from others, and your network bringing us together to share, we're better. So that's what I would say, and that's an ask, that continue bringing us in, because we don't have all of the answers. We're part of the solution. We're not the solution.
Well, I think all four of you are an enormous part of the solution. I think all of our participants in Sports Philanthropy World are part of the solution. Troy, Benita, Chris, Jason, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share your insight and become part of our network and become a resource for others and be able to teach and articulate what they can do to improve their efforts and learn from everything you're doing. So congratulations on everything that you've all accomplished and continue to do. We look forward to continuing to work together, and we thankful that you were with us for Sports Philanthropy World.
Thanks for having me. And
Thank
thank you
you,
all. Thanks for participating.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, we're going to jump into the next set of breakout sessions, and we'll be back here in 2 hours for the next set of panels for the athletes with careers in philanthropy, and then we'll end up with our closing keynote with David Meltzer. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye.